While Richard Burr, this was all over NPR this morning. I was listening this morning, and they were recapping this story. You know, a couple of days ago, they were talking about how Richard Burr had met with a whole bunch of high-dollar donors and told them this is going to be like the flu pandemic of 1918. This was weeks ago. Now it comes out that at the same time he was telling them that in private, he was unloading stock like there's no tomorrow. He sold up to $1.5 million worth of stock. And it turns out Georgia Republican Kelly Loeffler did the same thing. She dumped millions in stock. And oddly enough, she's saying, well, that's just a coincidence, except 2 of her 29 transactions were actually purchases. And one of those purchases was Citrix, which is the company that makes and sells Go to My PC, Go to My Meeting, Go to My, they used to be an advertiser on the show. They've got all these programs for working from home. And by the way, Kelly Loeffler's husband is the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Now, are you curious if he was dumping stocks? Keep in mind, this was weeks before the market crashed. This was 2 weeks before the market crashed. And then we find out that there's a third Republican senator, and maybe a fourth, Senator Ron Johnson, who just this week was saying, this was on Tuesday, he's the Republican senator from Wisconsin. These are all Republican senators. Says the flip side of this is the vast majority of people who get the coronavirus do survive. That means 97 and 99% will get through this, develop immunities, and will be able to move beyond this. We don't shut down our economy because tens of thousands of people die on the highways. It's a risk we accept so we can move about. We don't shut down our economies because tens of thousands of people die from the common flu. Getting coronavirus is not a death sentence except for maybe 3.4% of our population. Well, let's see. 330 million people. Let's say, let's be conservative and say less than 2/3 of us get it. Let's say it's only 200 million people. What's 3.4% of 200 million? If I'm doing the math right, that's 6.8 million people. That's like 3 times all the people who've died in all our wars. But, Ron Johnson says it's just fine. But it turns out that he was unloading stock, too. So he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. And then there's also some suggestions that Senator Perdue out of Georgia was also unloading stock. Now, Dianne Feinstein has put all of her investments in a blind trust. So she does not talk to the trustee. They don't talk to her. She has no control over it. The headline over on Fox News' website that I saw last night, about the same time that these stories were breaking, was Senator Feinstein and 3 other senators unloading stock during the crisis. Well, Feinstein's blind trust has to file these reports for the federal government showing what they bought and sold. And yeah, they sold some stock. But it is a virtual certainty that Feinstein had nothing to do with that because their stuff is in a blind trust. These other all these Republican senators did not put their assets in a blind trust. Instead, they're buying and selling themselves, apparently on insider information. Meanwhile, we're seeing the Republican stimulus plan, the one that Mitch McConnell has been working out with with the other 52 Republicans in the Senate. And we just saw the first peek of it last night. Richard Trumka says, the president of the AFL-CIO, he says the Senate GOP package is an utter disgrace. It gives free money to corporations. It ignores the health crisis. It does nothing to keep people working or to help the unemployed. And he says that the labor movement is going to oppose it. Daniel Hemmel, who's at the University of Chicago Law School, said, I don't know how else to describe this, but wantonly wicked. The poorest get 0. Low-income households get half of what middle-income households get, and kids count 40% of an adult. So, and Chuck Schumer has come out and said, this looks like a bailout for the rich. This doesn't look like the kind of thing that we would be in favor of. And so, get ready. The right-wing billionaires fully own the Republican Party, including all the Republicans in the Senate.